views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, nice to see you once again. It's time for the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to people who write stuff or who edit stuff, who are reporters, journalists, editors, writers, people who cover our elected officials, for example. And also we talk to filmmakers and photographers and people who are artists and people who are putting stuff out in the Bronx. In our second segment, we're going to talk to a group that did a really interesting film that is done by students, as a matter of fact. But to get started, we're going to have our serious face on, and we're going to talk to our buddy Rebecca C. Lewis, who is over there in Albany as we speak. And she's at the state capitol, and she's got some stuff to talk with us about. Nice to see you again, Rebecca.
Nice to see you too. It's pretty cold up here, just sheets of ice on the sidewalk. It is if you're coming up to Albany, just be careful. It's very cold, very icy.
I was going to say, welcome to Albany. That's what you get. Nonetheless, you wrote a piece that caught our eye, and obviously a little while back, Governor Hochul did her State of the State address, and very interestingly, and with your great analysis as always, you wrote a piece on what she left out of her State of the State address. I thought it was really interesting because most people, most electeds were generally enthusiastic about it. But at the bottom of their press releases, they said, by the way, I might have liked this. So why don't you talk to me about a couple of the things and we'll break them down that the governor left out of her State of the State address.
There were a number of things that she did not include. More funding for the Excluded Workers Fund, which has been depleted. That provides aid to undocumented immigrants and other people. State unemployment. Nothing about raising taxes, which is always a big deal for progressive lawmakers. Nothing on good cause eviction, which advocates are hoping to get passed. Very soon, as soon as possible. Nothing with single payer health care. It's Dick Gottfried's last session, and there's a strong push to get that through. So there are a number of things that she didn't include in her State of the State.
So stepping back to the whole package, do you then say the analysis is she took a safe road? She talked about the things that were obvious. There were things that were that everybody would like, but when it comes to getting in the weeds, she didn't want to put that out in her first State of the State address.
Certainly,
especially with an election coming up, by the way.
Yes, I mean, certainly, I wouldn't say it was 100% safe. There was certainly plenty there for progressives and the left and Democrats to be happy about. New housing plans, although not everyone was happy about it. Commitment to reform 421A. There was a lot, but at the same time, it was relatively safe. Notably, she did not talk about 421A in her actual speech. She didn't mention her support for the Clean Slate Act in her actual speech. She expressed support for parole reform or other sort of criminal justice actions that could get a side eye.
It would have been nice to see what her reaction is to the pushback on the criminal justice reform we had, on the bail reform, which has raised ire in a lot of places. Would have been nice to hear her say, for example, I'm all for what was done, and that's how we're going forward, or I'm open-minded about reforming it. Let's talk about that Clean Slate Act, which you referred to in your article. And I'll just quote right from your article. It would seal the felony records of many formerly incarcerated people after a certain amount of time on after their release. So if you have a felony record, and some of it could be significant crimes, then all of a sudden that would go away after a period of time. She didn't comment on that. That would
She
be
it,
incredibly controversial.
it was in her State of the State, but if you didn't closely read her book or didn't look through the details, you could have glossed over it. And certainly, it is somewhat controversial. It almost passed last session, but it kind of just the negotiations fell through right at the 10-yard line, if I'm using that football metaphor correctly. But certainly she has kind of avoided taking hard positions so far, before the session on any particular bill. So it's pretty significant to see that she actually said that she would work to get the Clean Slate Act passed, when has in the past very much just said, I'm going to leave it up to the legislature. Let me talk to the legislature. Let me see what they have to say when asked about specific bills and her potential position on them.
I can't tell you, and I've been doing programs on BronxNet for a very long time. I can't tell you how many discussions we've had on 421A. And, so why don't you talk about, the tax break for developers and why maybe at this time it's time to relook at it. She didn't mention it, so let's you and I talk about it.
Yeah, that was another thing that was it was in her book, but it wasn't included in her
That's right.
actual speech. Her speech was, pretty short, but what she included was very much, I think, and others seem to think as well, what she chose to highlight was really what she wanted to highlight, like her big priorities, and certainly not the 421A, I'm sure is not a big priority, but it's certainly a very controversial topic. It provides a tax break for developers to include a certain number of affordable units in their otherwise market rate developments. It's up for renewal this year, so many lawmakers are saying just let it lapse. We can do something better, something new. Governor Hochul is proposing let 421A end and we'll replace it with something new, something better, something that uses taxpayer dollars better. But,
It would have
as
been nice to hear it. That's really
yes.
what your point is.
And
Alice, you quoted a number of elected officials and what their impressions were, and it was what I said earlier, where they said glowing things, but then they said, and by the way, I pulled out one that I saw a release from Alessandra Biaggi, Senator Biaggi, and she was grateful. She says that, and I'm going to read directly from her statement, that Governor Hochul prioritized ethics reform in her address, to entirely create a new ethics commission. But she said, I am disappointed by the absence of intent to reform the Legislative Ethics Commission or Office of the Inspector General. So what she's getting at certainly is what happened with the governor, and that maybe we need more teeth above, to deal with this kind of malfeasance. So that was, yeah, I'm kind of adding to your article. That was another thing that was out there, or that is out there, that was not taken care of.
yeah, I mean, similar kind of vein. She got some criticism from the sexual harassment working group for not
That's right.
including anything specific about, new sexual harassment protections or workplace protections against harassment or discrimination. That's there's been a lot of progress, but there is still, bills pending, issues that need to be addressed, and she didn't mention any of that in her State of the State, which also garnered some disappointment from some on the left.
On the federal level, there with Build Back Better, there's a lot of talk about universal pre-K and those kinds of things. This did not come up, and it would have been, from an advocate's point of view, it would have been nice to hear the governor say, even if she doesn't fully endorse it, but say, this is on my plate right now, and we need a rigorous debate on how we're going to make sure that the youngest among us get a chance to, get into early childhood education.
Yeah, that was something somewhat notable as a potential fight between this at least the Senate and the governor as session begins. And during the budget, when the Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins was laying out her priorities and her conference's priorities for the year in her first speech of session, she specifically mentioned universal pre-K statewide. And Hochul kind of very explicitly says in her book, not in her actual speech, that she feels that something that should be done at the federal level. It seems like she's supportive, but something at the federal level, not at the state level. So if the legislature is trying to get funding for this massive project, who knows if she'll be a willing partner in that.
I don't know if you and I are being a little too tough on her, because this is what a lot of elected officials do. And of course, at city and state, you folks are right on top of everything. And it's what you do is to find out, what's not there and what we still need and, kind of get in the weeds. What's your assessment now of looking ahead at the election? She's going to be a pretty strong favorite, is my assessment, despite the interest of some to run against her. I don't think she was going to go anywhere in the state of the state that was going to hamper that possibility.
Yeah, certainly she is a strong contender. The big test is really going to be the budget, of course, where all of these big ideas of hers are going to have to, ink to paper, budget lines, numbers. But, her biggest competition right now has got to be Representative Lee Zeldin. He's the presumptive GOP nominee. He has support from the county leaders across the state. He's, I guess as well known as a local member of Congress can be, and he is certainly getting his name out there. And Tom Suozzi as well, but I think he's not going anywhere soon. But I think the haven't seen polling specifically with Suozzi yet, but I think that Hochul is probably seen as the favorite in the Democratic primary.
I think there's no question about it. And the way that the state legislature is structured and the amount of support she's likely to get, I think we're going to get a few more years of Governor Hochul. One thing she did include, and we only have a few seconds to deal with it, and I'm sorry, is the whole notion of term limits for statewide officials. That is a fascinating concept. Born out of the last couple of governors who have had to be thrown out of office. So we can't really go through that anymore. Anyway, Rebecca C. Lewis, you're the best. We appreciate your time. Say hello to Jeff and Zach and all our buddies up there in Albany. And guaranteed, we're going to invite you back because there's a lot going on and we want to talk about it.
Well, thanks for having me on. I always love talking to you.
Great. So there you go, folks. We're going to take it, and all that noise is going on in the state capitol. As a matter of fact, it's not me. It's them. But anyway, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to do that school group that made a film, and you'll see a piece of the film and everything else. Don't go away.
We are going to find some purpose in the middle of this pain.
Congressman Richie Torres, Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson, and other elected officials who make up the newly established Bronx Task Force on Fire Safety held a press conference to announce their first round of legislative and policy recommendations to solve the underlying issues that caused the devastating fire at Twin Park Northwest.
Today I will take the lead in announcing the federal recommendations, but in the days and weeks to come, my state and city colleagues will announce their own state and city proposals.
The first round of policy recommendations will tackle the root cause of the fire. The task force plans to target fire safety by empowering the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission to set mandatory standards for space heaters and requiring space heaters to have an automatic shutoff. Additionally, the policy recommendations will also target housing quality by requiring federally funded developments to have heat sensors and require HUD to disclose the results of HQS inspections in a publicly searchable online database.
Greater transparency will lead to greater accountability.
The group also plans to hold landlords accountable for not meeting the needs of their tenants. Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson feels that there is power in numbers and urges residents to work together and call the landlords when they're in need so they do not have to resort to purchasing space heaters.
So it's the same two tenants that are calling, and guess what? That doesn't rise to the level of attention. But if 100 people call, it's a big difference now.
Congressman Richie Torres believes that he culminated the strongest task force possible because there are representatives from various levels.
We need solutions at every level of government. to address the underlying conditions that drive these devastating fires in the Bronx.
As the Bronx Task Force on Fire Safety takes off, we can only hope for change. Reporting for BronxNet, Brittany Schuyler Aubain.
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz, switching gears as we always do in the middle of this program. And let's bring on Jose Esquea. Nice to have you with us, Jose. Jose is an independent director and producer of film and theater. He's also, and that's why he's here, an instructor and coach for the Knowledge Project, which does some wonderful things with our kids in our schools. And he's the instructor coach for the Knowledge Project online course, How to Make a Movie in 24 Hours. So nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. Tell me about the Hidden Force. Who created it? What is it? And why is it a good example of what it is you do with the Knowledge Project?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me and for
Sure.
having us. So The Hidden Force is a film written and directed by Dennis Prendy, who is actually a Bronxite from the Pelham Bay area. And he is a student at performing arts, professional performing arts school in Midtown Manhattan. He was one of the students during COVID that took advantage of our course, How to Make a Movie in 24 Hours. And Hidden Force is his sci-fi conceptual idea of this world that exists between our world and this sort of fantastic reality that gets created in what appears to be an accident.
The reason that I'm smiling is, one of the things I expressed to you beforehand, having young people have a chance to play out their fantasies or play out their ideas and do it on a piece of artwork or film or photography or whatever it is in this day and age when the kids have frankly been so abused, having to go to school online and, they can't even see people's faces, is a really important thing. And talk to me a little bit about working with the young people and watching them create something, guiding them in that creation. Just give me a little insight of what it looks like and what it feels like for you as their leader and instructor.
Sure. One of the things that was really fascinating about this iteration is that like everyone else, we had to switch gears in the mode of instruction for our students. We are normally a visiting artist program, and we go into the schools and we work with the students in the classroom. And like everybody else, we had to pivot and do so online. So our method of instruction and delivery had to be tailored to this new mode, right? As we have
new reality, man. We know
exactly.
It for sure.
Exactly. And however, one of the things that is amazing about present day technology, particularly in filmmaking, is that unlike when I was a young filmmaker, a filmmaker has the capacity to do pretty much everything on their phone, right?
Oh, yeah, right. Absolutely. This is it. You need a camera, you need an editor, whatever it is,
Exactly.
you can just do it. And I'll tell you, you and I are a little older. The kids can do it. They can they know how it works. Exactly. I don't know how it works.
Exactly. And so the interesting thing that we had to learn to convey to the children was that the way that you accomplish a goal is to properly plan your course of action. So one of the funny things about the title of the course, Making a Movie in 24 Hours, was that initially the course was going to be about everything that pre-production should be and all the planning and preparation that it takes to get yourself together to go out and pursue your own project. Unfortunately, pre-production and everything that you should know about preparing was not exactly the most attractive title to teenagers.
I see. Oh, I see. So now, is this a volunteer? This is a voluntary, like after school project, or is it something that's part of the curriculum over there at the Professional Performing Arts Academy?
No, actually, when the knowledge project comes into a school, the group of students are self-selected, so they are choosing to take on these projects above and beyond everything that they're already working on that is part of their curriculum in school and their extracurricular projects, which is one of the reasons why we really admire the young people that work with us. So, like I said, we shifted everything, including our title, and the 24 hours of the class was essentially the number of hours that they were going to be instructed on how to do the project, and then they had to go out and complete the project.
Wow!
Within the parameters of COVID.
And this group did that in 24 hours.
Yes. So they took the 24 hours.
My hat's off. I'm respect, you know.
Yeah. So just so that everyone is aware, they didn't like not sleep for 24 hours and only do our course. We met twice a week for a certain number of hours, and the total number of hours equaled 24 altogether.
You are abusing our kids. That's the last thing you want to hear.
So, and then after that, they went out into the field and did production.
And in this case, it literally is the field. So we have a little trailer we're going to show. So I'm going to read the description. As four friends reconnect their nostalgic friendship, they fall into an invisible world, trapped. Each must fight for their survival, even as one friend becomes temporarily lost and succumbs to the hidden force. Be afraid. Be very afraid. That's a good introduction here, right?
Absolutely.
All right, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, from the students at the Professional Performing Arts School in Manhattan, Bronx kids at the top. Let's take a look, The Hidden Force.
When happiness turns into darkness and memories into nightmares, be afraid. Be very afraid.
There we go. Now, so I mean, it's tremendous work, and I mean, they even got the titles. You know, they did the whole thing with the background music and the sound effects. How long is the film itself?
The film itself, I believe it totaled about 10 minutes altogether.
How would you, I don't want to necessarily ask you to give it a grade, but how would you evaluate this group of students and what they did? By the way, I think we have some photos of the kids, so let's take a look at that. Mm-hmm. But how would you evaluate what we just saw and the whole 10-minute film?
Well, I think I certainly would give them, I mean, I'm biased, but there's Dennis and his parents. And those are the cast and crew at Performing Arts High School during the school premiere. I would absolutely give them an A+.
Really?
Even though I'm biased. And the reason for that is not just solely because they understood the mechanics and logistics of film production, but you have to remember that they did this at the height of COVID. So they had to learn to deal with a set of restrictions and circumstances that really all of us had to deal with together. And they still delivered on the project.
And they still did it. Fantastic. Listen, I want to ask you about something else. As I understand, you're currently in production for a presentation of the James Baldwin screenplay reading of One Day When I Was Lost, which is about the life of Malcolm X. Talk to me a little bit about that project.
Sure. That project will take place during Black History Month. It'll be free to the audience, just donation based. And it will be the first time since the screenplay was written by James Baldwin in the late 60s that it will be written in its entirety in public. We are procuring donations for both the Malcolm and Betty Shabazz Center at the Audubon Ballroom and for Entrepreneurs of Tomorrow, which is an organization that does work with children in the inner city to teach them how to run their own businesses.
Now, I just want to be clear in my own mind, is this connected to, the other work in the Knowledge Project, or this is just something you are working on?
This is something that I am working on, and it is also supported by the Knowledge Project.
Right. And so you had mentioned that there will be some young people involved. I'm assuming that's the case.
Well, in this case, the young people will be involved in one of the really great honors of this project is that the final reading is going to become part of the James Baldwin archives. So we are hoping to get young people involved in the capture of the rehearsal process and presentation of the piece.
That's particularly relevant. He was here in the Bronx at DeWitt Clinton High School, my alma mater, and his legacy still rings true for many of us who did graduate from DeWitt Clinton High School, but also for people over there. Okay, so let's just talk about what's next. Now, you worked with a group here on that film. Are there other groups that are working on films? Do you just do one film at a time? How does it all work? And certainly, if anybody wants to contact you or the Knowledge Project about these things, how do they do that?
Well, certainly, if you, I would say the best way to get a hold of what we do as a Knowledge Project is to contact the Knowledge Project at theknowledgeproject.org. And that's usually done. The schools usually contact the organization. And then depending on all the different things that are taught by the Knowledge Project, where there are professionals that teach everything from stand-up to journalism, we then come in as a set of instructors. And now we know whether it's physically in the building or whether it's online, we can then provide that enrichment for the students and the young people in your area. I myself can be reached via Twitter or Instagram at @Esquea. And I work independently as a film director and producer, and even a martial arts instructor.
But clearly this is a labor of love when you get to work with young people. But the first part of my question is, do you do more than one of these projects at a time? Or do you really just do like that one film? In other words, you got a whole group of them going. How does it work?
I personally tend to hone on one child-led project or young person-led project,
right,
and one adult-led project. This way, right. I focus my energy and do my best to deliver the best.
Right, project. And you could see that if they do this, they'll be able. The world is their oyster, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Right. Anyway, Jose Esquea from the Knowledge Project, and also from the Professional Performing Arts School in Manhattan. Thank you so much. Thank you. What's that?
I said, I'm from the Bronx.
And well, of course, that's why you're here. That's like the first requirement for us on the Bronx Buzz. Anyway, thank you so much. Thanks for working with our kids. And you got something new. We want to be here and we want to show it. So thank you so much. And that will do it for our program for this evening. We thank Rebecca C. Lewis from City and State, New York, and we appreciate her time. We appreciate Jose's time. And guess what? We'll be here next week for more. Have a good night.